bit more about that in a minute. I would just like to say a few things to those of you who are providing leadership to our colleges and universities. And I hope the academic year is off to a good start. And I also know in talking to president colleagues across the
minimize it on the screen, but
I'm not certain who's speaking, but you may need to mute. I know in talking to some presidents across the country that some are doing very well and others are already experiencing some challenges with COVID. So we know that these are most interesting times in which we find ourselves, and I hope things continue to go smoothly for all of our Maryland higher education institutions. I'm not going to do any regular business today. For the commission members, we have a meeting coming up on the 22nd, so we'll handle business then. Secretary Fielder, I don't know if there's anything you'd like to say.
Yeah, what I would like to say is also congratulations to all the members of the staffs and faculty and the students at the universities that are reporting plus 90% vaccination rate. The very strong acute awareness of resiliency at every campus and the ability to turn on a dime from in-person to online, now in person, and hopefully staying in person. So with that, why don't we go ahead and proceed, Madam Chair.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Secretary Fielder. Excuse me. So as you all know, we're here for a review meeting to listen to remarks both from the Secretary and Stevenson University and other higher education institutions that are impacted by this, to take a look or to hear about Stevenson's proposal for a doctorate in physical therapy and their appeal from the Secretary's decision. And Soma, if I could ask you just to review the process and then we can get started from there.
Sure. So all the participants did get the schedule, but for other guests, the speaking order and times are the Secretary first, and he gets up to 30 minutes. Stevenson, up to 30 minutes. The Secretary can make a response to Stevenson's presentation with any remaining time from the 30 minutes. Stevenson then can make a subsequent response if there's any time. 30 minutes. University of Maryland, the store will have 10 minutes. University of Maryland, Baltimore, and at that point, the chair will call for a closed session for discussion, and that's when the review meeting will be over. All times that I just talked about include questions from the commissioners. Commissioners, of course, can ask questions at any time. If too much of your presentation is taken up by commissioner questions, the chair can provide more time if it's necessary. I guess I will keep time, Madam Chair.
I appreciate that, Soma. That would be a huge help. Thank you. Okay, so then Secretary Fielder, I will turn things over to you for your remarks.
Good afternoon, members of the Commission. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm going to go straight forward, and I will not use all my 30 minutes and reserve whatever time for either rebuttals or other questions. Thank you. Pursuant to Regulation 13B 020328, don't you just love all these codes? Anyway, the Code of Maryland, Comar, I submit the following statements to the Maryland Higher Education Commission in support of my July 29, 2021 decision to deny the proposed program from Stevenson for a new doctorate of physical therapy. I request that my decision to deny the proposed program be affirmed by the Commission. First, I do not find an additional justification for a dual operation of Stevenson's proposed program that is broadly similar to University of Maryland Eastern Shore's unique and high demand program. Second, I find compelling evidence regarding limited clinical placement sites in Maryland, particularly in the Baltimore area. And as you know, the University of Maryland, Baltimore also objected to this request from Stevenson. So that is a consideration. Third, I find compelling evidence from the national organization suggesting a saturation of the job market in physical therapy. Currently, there are 2 physical therapy programs at the doctorate level in Maryland, and the doctorate as a standard is required for national accreditation. So both Umes and UMB have that accreditation, one for 37 years and the other for, I think, 63 years now. So they've been very strong programs continuing. The Commission on Accreditation of Physical Therapy Education is the primary national accreditor for physical therapy programs, including physical therapy assistant programs. Both the UMES program and UMB program are accredited by the same CAPTE. That's the the Commission of Academic Accreditation in Physical Therapy Education. Stevenson has not yet submitted the notification of intent to seek accreditation. In addition to the 2 existing doctorate in physical therapy programs, the state of Maryland has 8 accredited physical therapy assistant programs at the community colleges. In addition, in the surrounding states and DC, so Delaware, Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, and DC, there are a total of 35 additional doctorate DPT programs in our surrounding areas. For independent institutions and private for-profit institutions, the Commission shall review and recommend or not recommend implementation of the program proposals for new programs and substantial modifications. The difference here between the independent institutions and the public institutions, it's either approval or denial, and the independent institutions, it's either recommended for implementation or not recommended. The consequences have to do with not being recommended means the institution can still proceed to offer the program. However, there could be consequences in budgeting in Annapolis. To the issues for review, I found that all the criteria set forth in the COMAR were met by program review. UMES and UMD objected based on duplication that would cause demonstrable harm to another institution. The decision to deny the proposed new program was based on the duplication analysis under COMAR, including MHEC's responsibility under state law to review and prevent academic duplication with regards to Hbis, Historic Black College and University. And as all of us know, the coalition case was just settled, entirely supported the legislation signed by the governor. So this is a strong indication. The comparing the proposed new program to determine if duplication exists are set forth in COMAR to include the degree to be awarded. And as you know, all 3 programs would offer the same degree, the doctorate in physical therapy. Program objectives, content, and delivery competencies, similarity to unique high demand programs at HBI, the role of program in each school's mission, admission requirements, geographic accessibility, and residency requirements, analysis of enrollment characteristics, and employer market demand. Due to the fact that each of these programs are accredited by a national accrediting board, it's the same exact curriculum. Well, it's not what I say, the exact curriculum. The curriculum has the requirements even down to the number of clinical hours that the student must have. So there's a tremendous amount of similarities. The program objection is, of course, the completion of the doctorate and into the medical field, serving both in gaining knowledge as well as serving as autonomous and as members of a healthcare team. A little bit more in detail on each one of those. The degree level, the doctorate, and the title are the same for each of the programs, UMES, UMB, and Stevenson. There's no areas of specializations in either the proposed or the existing programs. Again, that's based upon accreditation standards. In terms of the objections, Stevenson proposed program description. The proposed program, and I'm going to quote, aims to prepare healthcare professionals who are able to practice as autonomous physical therapists, generalists, demonstrating competent, compassionate, contemporary, reflective, legal, and ethical practices. Graduates will function effectively as integral members of a multidisciplinary healthcare team. UMES program quoting there is the DPT degree program constitutes the initial professional preparation for students desiring to become physical therapists. Graduates of the program will be prepared to carry out expanding responsibilities as autonomous healthcare providers, practicing in prevention, examination, evaluation, intervention, consultation, and acute care, rehabilitation, outpatient settings, educational and research environments. And I could read UMB, but we're looking at very, very similar language here. All three programs are delivered in person at each institution, so there's no difference in delivery modality, meaning hybrid or distance or online. They're all delivered in person. The proposed Stevenson program is 120 credits. The program at Umes is 128 credits, and the program at UMB is 115 credits. We did do a side-by-side curriculum comparison, looking to see the similarities, title, language, and so forth. And there's a tremendous amount of similarity. Again, this is driven by national accreditation standards, not by institutional choice. Okay, just a second. Clinical education experiences constitute a significant requirement for all DPT programs. The standards require the clinical education component curriculum include a minimum of 30 weeks, 1,050 hours of full-time clinical education experiences. There is significant competition and high demand for clinical rotation sites in the state of Maryland. The demand for clinical education experiences are attributed to physical therapy programs, the APTA or the physical therapy assistants, the 2 doctorate programs, as well as the 35 programs in adjoining states. And there is no boundary limit for how far a student can be assigned to complete their clinical placements. So students from the adjoining states can be in Maryland if Maryland's medical system can support it. A 2020 report from the American Council of Academic Physical Therapy highlights a national survey in which 61% of the institutions indicated there were not enough clinical placement sites. UES has indicated that some students have been expected to travel great distances to the Western Shore for clinical placements. The UMES program is both a unique program, the only one in Maryland at a HBCU, and a very high demand program. If I'm correct, the UMES program, 25% of their doctorates, their second highest number of production of doctorates, are in this program, with pharmacy being the top producing doctorate programs. And on average, there are 88 students enrolled in the DPT program in any given year. This is very much a high demand program for UMES, and the number of applicants is high. And I do believe Stevenson did some documentation and data analysis on the fact that there are more applicants than there are openings. One note on that, when you review the national standards of the Accreditation Board, they specifically limit the number or increase that any existing program can increase. As an example, if UMB or UMES decided tomorrow that there's such a demand and need in our workforce for physical therapists, that they could simply add 50%. Well, they can't. The board won't allow that. So that's an artificial ceiling that's placed on this program. Additionally, other than UMB, no other University of Maryland offers the doctorate in physical therapy. It's believed that the proposed program at Stevenson has the potential to compete for the same students seeking a doctorate in physical therapy. Similarly, there would be competition for clinical sites. We went through some very heavy analysis very recently on MedTech program, physician's assistant programs, occupational therapy, and quite a number of the allied health fields, and we run into the same problem. Stevenson is a private institution. All three institutions have a career-focused mission. Stevenson, of course, being the strongest in their career focus, with making the statements that the other two have research orientations and broader academic offerings. Both Umes and UMB have strong enrollment with average 88 students and 174 students per year, respectively, over 10 years. So it's a very strong indication of the performance that these two institutions that exist. I know I'm rushing it a little bit. ACAPA-PT, similarly provided a 2020 report that projects the supply and demand for physical therapists through 2030. The model shows that the projected increases in the national supply of physical therapists is outpacing expected growth in demand for students based on an increase in the U.S. population who have health care. Based on the current graduation, licensing, and attrition trends, the model projects an estimated surplus, and that's a surplus of 25,235 physical therapist doctors by 2030. And that's a huge surplus. Part of the reasons that they're giving this is that the difficulty with the medical insurance coverage, as well as the changing in our population. The proposed program has the same curricular objectives and leads to the same workforce outcome as the two existing programs. The proposed program would likely attract the same student population, especially in the Baltimore area, being that they're only 10 to 15 miles apart. I didn't measure it, but that's close. The existing program at UMES is unique and high demand at an HBCU, and it was started in 1984. There is further evidence suggesting a forthcoming national saturation of professional physical therapists, including a limited market need. In conclusion, based upon careful analysis of the proposed objection, response, and information shared regarding graduate physical therapy programs, the proposed doctorate of physical therapy at Stevenson would unreasonably duplicate the existing doctoral programs at UMES and UMB and would cause demonstrable harm. Therefore, my decision of July 29, 2021 should be upheld. I request that the commission affirm the decision and to not recommend the Stevenson proposed new doctorate program. And I reserve any time I have for rebuttal or answering questions.
Thank you, Secretary Fielder. Commissioners, do you have any questions? Okay, and so I'm assuming time was reserved. Okay, all right. President Hirschman from Stevenson, I'll turn things over to you. I don't know who all is going to be speaking, but why don't you start?
I will. Thank you. I am joined today by Provost Susan Gorman, Vice President for Legal Affairs and Government Relations, Antoinette Marbury, and Dean Mary Dermowitz, who will each present in a few minutes. Sarah Fiedler, President of NICUA, also joins us, and Sarah's available to answer questions about the Maryland independent colleges and universities as a whole. We are here today to request that the commission recommend implementation of the Stevenson Doctor of Physical Therapy degree. Even though we have different perspectives, we appreciate Secretary Fielder and his colleagues' collaborative approach to the review process, as well as the engagement of our UMES and UMB colleagues. We're also grateful to you, the commissioners, for your leadership of higher education in Maryland and the amazing work that you do. I want to begin by acknowledging the impact of discrimination on academic program development at Maryland's HBIs and recognizing the great importance of preventing unreasonable program duplication. The basis for our appeal is that the program duplication and demonstrable harm criteria are being misapplied in this specific case. So today we'll present evidence that our program is not unreasonably duplicative and that we have designed it to prevent demonstrable harm to UMES and UMB, specifically their enrollments and their clinical placements. We will also demonstrate, in contrast to the model that was cited, that there is excess workforce demand for physical therapists it is dramatic demand and it will continue for the foreseeable future, and that the denial of our program will unintentionally produce demonstrable harm to Maryland's communities with disparate impact on historically underserved communities, particularly in our immediate region. So here I will ask Dean Dermowitz to share evidence demonstrating that there is no unreasonable program duplication and that our program is designed to prevent demonstrable harm to UMES and UMB. Thereafter, Provost Gorman and Vice President Marbury will also speak. Dean Dermowitz.
Thank you, Dr. Hirschman. Thank you, members of the commission. As Dr. Hirschman indicated, I'll present evidence that Stevenson's proposed Doctor of Physical Therapy program is not unreasonably duplicative and will not cause demonstrable harm to the DPT program at University of Maryland Eastern Shore. As the Secretary noted, all Doctor of Physical Therapy programs prepare graduates for entry-level practice as licensed physical therapists, and they must meet the same rigorous accreditation standards of the Commission on the Accreditation for Physical Therapy Education, or CAPTE for short. Programs can, however, meet these standards in a variety of ways, so the existence of common accreditation standards does not mean that programs are unreasonably duplicative. In fact, there are multiple critical dimensions on which Stevenson's proposed program differs from UMES's program, which, as I will outline, clearly demonstrate the distinctness of Stevenson's program as compared to UMES's program. First, there are significant differences between the missions of both institutions. Most notably, UMES is a public institution, while Stevenson is an independent institution. In addition, as a research institution, UMES's mission is distinctly focused on doctoral research degrees and applied research. In contrast, Stevenson is primarily focused on our students' career preparation at all levels. UMES's identity as a land-grant institution with associated programs in agriculture and advanced technology also represents a fundamental difference between Stevenson and UMES, as Stevenson educates our students in a liberal arts tradition. The different missions of our institutions have a significant impact on the structure and function or focus of our programs. Most importantly, the educational objectives of each program are quite distinct. While both programs will prepare students to practice autonomously as physical therapists, as all DPT programs do, Stevenson's program also emphasized preparing our graduates to be integral members of a multidisciplinary healthcare team. Consistent with this and distinct from UMES's approach, our program will engage students in simulated patient care scenarios with our nursing, medical laboratory science, biomedical engineering, and Doctor of Psychology students. The educational objectives of UMES's program emphasize preparing graduates to contribute to the field of physical therapy through research and other scholarly activities, which is consistent with its mission as a research institution. Conversely, Stevenson graduates will strive to enhance and improve clinical practice in congruence with our career-focused mission. Pedagogically, this difference in focus is reflected in multiple ways. For example, students in Stevenson's program will participate in 2 integrated clinical experiences within the first 2 semesters of the program, whilst UMES students have their first clinical experience in the summer after the first 2 semesters of the program. Secondly, in order to meet CAPTE's standards for research, UMES's curriculum includes a standalone research methods course in the first year, followed by independent study opportunities. Stevenson's program will meet the common accreditation requirement by integrating research methods into our Professional Issues 1 course and offering research opportunities in multiple content-based courses throughout the curriculum. Third, it is important to recognize that the geographical locations of UMES and Stevenson play a significant role in distinguishing the programs, since the 2 institutions are located in distinct regions of the state, separated by 145 miles and approximately 3 hours of travel time. For example, Stevenson's program can provide an important opportunity for Maryland students in our region who may be place-bound due to family and/or financial commitments, as well as for qualified students who are not accepted into either of the extant programs. A last significant difference between Stevenson's proposed program and the extant programs in Maryland is in cohort size. Stevenson plans to limit our program's enrollment to a maximum of 25 students, significantly less than UMES, UMB, and the national average cohort size, reflecting our mission to provide individualized attention and support for our students. Importantly, as I will discuss next, based on excess student demand, the small cohort size also effectively prevents any demonstrable harm to enrollments at the extant programs. As we have noted in all of our written materials, Stevenson's proposed program will not cause demonstrable harm to Maryland's existing programs because there is significant excess student demand, both in Maryland and nationally. Data from the Physical Therapy Centralized Application Service, PTCAS, demonstrate that each year there are approximately 200 academically qualified Maryland residents who apply to DPT programs but are not accepted. Given Stevenson's proposed cohort size of 25 students, this excess student demand just among Maryland students guarantees that our program will not cause demonstrable harm to enrollments at UMES or UMB. In addition, as demonstrated in the PTCAS data and in aggregate annual program data provided by CAPTE, the dramatic excess student demand is also consistently seen on a national basis, further guaranteeing that Stevenson's program will not harm either UMES or UMB. Specifically, in the 2018-2019 application cycle, there were 7,165 more qualified applicants than accepted students nationally. In Maryland and our immediate region, including Delaware, District of Columbia, Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, and New Jersey, a total of 971 qualified applicants were denied a seat in any DPT program. Longitudinal data strongly support the longstanding nature of this excess student demand for DPT programs. In every year since 2012, approximately 70% of qualified applicants to DPT programs are not offered a seat in any program across the nation. The dramatically high and ongoing excess student demand nationally, regionally, and in the state of Maryland, in combination with Stevenson's small cohort size of 25 students, effectively precludes any harmful effect of our program on enrollment in UMES's program. I'd now like to turn to the data showing that our program will not cause demonstrable harm to the availability of clinical placements for the extant programs. As a provider of health professions education for more than 30 years, we are very cognizant of the challenges in securing clinical placements. For this reason, we have designed and will implement our program in a manner that will not have a negative impact on the availability of clinical placements for either program. First and foremost, I do want to reiterate that our small cohort size of 25 students will, by definition, limit our impact on placements available for UMES and UMB students. In addition, we have proactively begun reaching out to potential clinical partners to identify those which are able to support additional student clinical placements without harming the placements offered to UMES or UMB students. As noted in our written materials, 24 clinical entities representing over 500 individual clinical sites have so far indicated that they are eager to accept Stevenson students in addition to the UMB and UMES students they currently host. It should also be noted, as the Secretary did, that many clinical organizations in Maryland currently accept students from out-of-state programs for clinical placements. Of these organizations, several have indicated that they prioritize students in Maryland programs in accepting clinical interns. This prioritization further ensures that adding a program at Stevenson will not negatively impact the placements UMES and UMB already offer their students. We are also in the process of surveying potential clinical partners to gain a community-based perspective on the availability of clinical placements. And to date, we have received responses from potential clinical partners in Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and Carroll County. Within just this limited geographical area, respondents indicated that they have the capacity to host at least 350 student clinical experiences on an annual basis. These preliminary survey results strongly indicate that there is more than sufficient capacity among physical therapy organizations to support clinical experiences in Maryland for students from UMB, UMES, and Stevenson. The data described here and in our written materials clearly demonstrate that Stevenson's DPT program has been designed and can be implemented without causing demonstrable harm to enrollments or clinical experiences at UMES or UMB. In summary, data from multiple sources provides strong evidence that Stevenson's program is not unreasonably duplicative and will not cause demonstrable harm to UMES's DPT program. Key differences between Stevenson and UMES and our respective institutional missions are reflected in the educational objectives, curricular structure, and pedagogical approach of each program. Further, we have shown that there is dramatic excess student demand in Maryland, our surrounding region, and nationally. We have also shown that there is sufficient capacity in the professional physical therapy community to support clinical experiences for Stevenson students without harming the placements available for UMES or UMB. The significant student demand and the demonstrated capacity for clinical placements, coupled with our small cohort size of only 25 students, strongly support that no demonstrable harm will come to enrollments or clinical placements in UMES's or UMB's program. Rather, Stevenson's program represents an important opportunity for the state to meet student demand and enhance healthcare services available to Maryland residents. I am pleased to now ask Provost Gorman to share evidence demonstrating significant workforce demand for physical therapists.
Thank you, Dean Dermowitz, President Hirschman, and members of the Commission. The evidence presented thus far demonstrates that Stevenson's program in physical therapy is not unreasonably duplicative and will not cause demonstrable harm to enrollments or to clinical placements at UMES or UMB. At this time, we will present evidence of a high demand for physical therapists in the workforce as demonstrated by local, state, regional, and national data. In fact, it was the strong and sustained labor market demand for licensed physical therapists that was an important driver for Stevenson in creating our DPT program in the first place. In our original program proposal, our prior responses to the objections, and our written appeal, we shared long-term data projections that demonstrate the very strong workforce demand for physical therapists. For example, the national projections developed by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics demonstrate the employment projections for physical therapists are strong and expected to increase by more than 18% from 2019 to 2029. The Maryland projections developed by the Maryland Department of Labor show the long-term occupational projections for physical therapists are even stronger than the national forecast, with an increase of nearly 33% over a similar time period. The average number of job openings for physical therapists each year in Maryland is projected to be 430. The total number of DPT graduates in the state of Maryland averages 88 over the last 5 years, which leaves a gap of 342 job openings for physical therapists in Maryland. Adding Stevenson's proposed 25 graduates to the state's total still leaves 317 open physical therapy positions in Maryland each year. If we step back to look more broadly at the Mid-Atlantic region, the long-term occupational projections for physical therapists show an increase of 22% in Delaware, 15.4% in Washington, D.C., 20% New Jersey, 20.6% in Pennsylvania. The annual average number of job openings for physical therapists in the Mid-Atlantic region exceeds the total number of DPT graduates in the region by 338. At the request of our colleagues, we also added Maryland's border states of Virginia and West Virginia to the analysis, which revealed an even greater gap between the employment projections and the number of DPT graduates. Specifically, each year, there are an average of 446 job openings for physical therapists above and beyond the number of DPT graduates in the region. Seeking converging evidence on the question of anticipated workforce demand for physical therapists, we compared job market openings in a year-on-year comparison to identify the direction of short-term trends. The data demonstrated that unique job postings for physical therapists have more than doubled over the past year in Maryland, and unique job postings are up at least 50% in each of our surrounding states. Short-term trends provide clear evidence of increasing workforce demand. To provide a community-based perspective on the demand for physical therapists in Owings Mills and nearby communities, we conducted a local survey. As a reminder, the survey participants were all from clinical sites that explicitly affirmed that the placement of Stevenson students would not negatively impact clinical placements for UMES and UMB students. 60% of the responses from these clinical sites indicate they have more than 171 job openings right now. Taking into account their current vacancies and their projected vacancies, this relatively small number of employers, all geographically close to Stevenson University, anticipate the need to hire 708 physical therapists over the next 5 years. In contrast, last year, there were 93 DPT graduates in the entire state of Maryland. Moving from the community perspective to the individual practitioner's experience, we shared video testimony from Dr. Alicia Bolden-Jeffers, a Stevenson alumna who received her Doctor of Physical Therapy degree from Howard University. Dr. Bolden-Jeffers currently practices in Owings Mills, and her testimony describes the current physical therapy workforce as short-staffed and exhausted. From her vantage point, there are many open positions and a significant workforce demand for more physical therapists in our community. She also poignantly describes the critical importance of increasing the diversity of physical therapy providers. Dr. Bolden-Jeffers references COVID-19 in her testimony, and while the pandemic was in an earlier stage when we first proposed our program, we now consider the question of how post-acute sequela SARS-CoV-2 infection, otherwise known as long COVID, might impact the long-term need for physical therapists in Maryland. As of yesterday, there were 509,393 documented cases of COVID-19 in Maryland, and the effects of these infections have fallen disproportionately on communities of color. Specifically, as of yesterday, over 46% of the Maryland cases were persons who identify as Hispanic or African American, even though Hispanics and African Americans represent over 41% of Maryland's population. Emerging research suggests that 10% of documented infected persons will develop long COVID, which means that there will likely be well over 50,000 cases of long COVID in Maryland alone, given that many of the symptoms of long COVID, like fatigue and joint pain, are indications for physical therapy treatment. Long COVID will substantially increase the need for physical therapy in our Maryland communities. We have provided compelling and converging evidence at the national, regional, state, local, and individual levels that demonstrates the extremely strong workforce demand for physical therapists over the short term and the long term. This demand far exceeds the current supply. We have also provided a detailed and multifaceted analysis refuting the conclusions drawn from the untested model presented by the American Physical Therapy Association, or APTA, which our colleagues cite as evidence in their objections. In contrast to every other source of data on the matter, the new APTA model projects a national surplus of physical therapists. In our analyses, we highlighted profound problems with applying APTA's theoretical model to Maryland. We provided evidence that undercut their claims regarding future market saturation. And in fact, we used their own data to provide further evidence of excess demand for physical therapists in Maryland. In the interest of time, I will not repeat the list of problems we identified, but I will draw your attention to the fact that the authors of the APTA report themselves acknowledged their struggle to develop an accurate predictive workforce model. They were using their previous model for 7 years, and then they changed the model last year. With less than a year of data available under their new model, and in the wake of a model that they abandoned after 7 years, we are extremely concerned about the validity and reliability of the new model's projections. It is completely untested and by their own admission does not take into account the impacts of the sustained global pandemic. Given these substantive and publicly documented concerns and limitations, it is clearly not appropriate to use conclusions from the APTA model in Maryland's program review process. The straightforward, common sense interpretation of all the data presented is that there is a significant need for additional licensed doctors of physical therapy beyond those being trained by UMES and UMB in the Maryland, the regional, and the national labor markets. The evidence demonstrates a dramatic need for more physical therapists to serve Maryland citizens, which supports the addition of Stevenson's Doctor of Physical Therapy program. Our DPT program is well positioned to address the need for more physical therapists, and we have demonstrated that our program can do so without an adverse impact to UMES or UMB's programs. Thank you very much for your consideration. It's now my pleasure to yield the floor to Vice President Antoinette Marbury.
Thank you, Provost Gorman, to President Hirschman, Dean Dermowitz, and members of the committee. Thank you for this time. Stevenson University acknowledges the state's obligation to prevent unreasonable duplication of programs at Maryland's 4 HBIs. We understand that Secretary Fielder's decision on whether or not to recommend new academic programs must be based on the factors specified in Entitled 13B of COMAR, and that in this instant case, the Secretary's denial of Stevenson's application is based on his finding that the proposed program would be an unreasonable duplication of the existing programs. We respectfully disagree with this conclusion. Through the detailed information and compelling data shared here today by my colleagues, and through our more expansive written appeal, we have addressed and rebutted each of the claims made in the Secretary's duplication analysis that supports his finding. We also believe that we have established that a Stevenson DPT program would be distinct from a UMES program and would neither unreasonably duplicate nor cause demonstrable harm to UMES or UMB. I now would like to ask the members of the Commission to consider 3 additional perspectives that we hope will contribute to your favorable decision in Stevenson University's appeal. For the reasons that follow, we believe that approving a Stevenson University DPT program will create new opportunities for Maryland to more fully serve its diverse citizenry. First, many of the sites where Stevenson students would serve as interns and eventually as providers are in communities that are among the most diverse in our state. As was mentioned earlier in this presentation and in Stevenson's written appeal, we have confirmed with 24 clinical entities who already provide internships for the existing programs that there is an express need for more clinical providers in Maryland than the numbers currently produced by UMES and UMB. We have also identified clinical sites that confirm that they will hire over the next 5 years in many clinical settings throughout Maryland, including Owings Mills, where Stevenson is located, and nearby Randallstown. Owings Mills and Randallstown are 57% and 81% African American, respectively. Given this, the denial of a Stevenson DPT program could, in the long run, have the unintended consequence of limiting the pool of providers available to serve in Maryland, including in some of the most diverse communities in our state. Given the importance of providing clinical services to all Maryland citizens, several community and corporate leaders, as well as the entire District 11 delegation, have attested to the critical importance of a Stevenson DPT program for Owings Mills and surrounding communities. Several leaders wrote letters, copies of which we provided in our written appeal materials, stating that Stevenson is an anchor in the region and that its graduates contribute to local economies. These leaders further stated that by offering a new DPT program, Stevenson would make critical contributions to healthcare in this region. Second, your support of a new DPT program at Stevenson would also create a real opportunity to increase the educational access for Maryland's diverse community of aspiring graduate students, and in the long run, to increase the diversity of the specialty of physical therapy overall. The demographic diversity of Stevenson's current graduate student enrollments would position our new DPT program to join institutions like UMES in increasing the diversity of DPT graduates in our state. As illustrated in the table on page 9 of our written materials, the proportion of graduate students at Stevenson who identify as African American is substantially greater than the corresponding proportions at all but one of the state's non-HBI institutions. Based on these compelling demographic trends, it is reasonable for Stevenson to expect comparable levels of demographic diversity among our candidates in a new DPT program. This could again have a longer-term effect of a more diverse population of interns and providers in our region. Finally, if Stevenson's new DPT program is not recommended for approval by the Commission, there will be a missed opportunity to have Stevenson, a highly diverse, independent institution, directly contribute to creating a pipeline of undergraduate students for future enrollment in Maryland's DPT programs. For all the reasons offered here today, Stevenson has every reason to expect that our undergraduate students, particularly those who are place-bound, would now pursue a DPT program if one were offered that is far more geographically proximate to them. In conclusion, in addition to not being an unreasonable duplication of the existing Doctor of Physical Therapy programs, I hope that members of the Commission will agree that a third DPT program here at Stevenson, rather than causing harm, would in fact create good by increasing educational and professional opportunities for all Marylanders and by providing greater access to specialized care for Maryland's diverse citizenry. Thank you. I'd now like to yield the floor to Dr. Hirschman, who will provide summative remarks.
1 minute.
Thank you, and mindful of time, the last point I want to make is that if the Commission recommends implementation of our program, we stand ready to work with our colleagues at UMES and UMB under whatever protocol the Commission recommends to ensure that there are no demonstrable harm comes to extant programs. We appreciate your patience and consideration and request that you recommend implementation of our Doctor of Physical Therapy degree. Thank you.
Thank you, President Hirschman, and everyone else from Stevenson who was part of the presentation. Secretary Fielder, is there anything that you'd like to say in response?
No, I would compliment the Stevenson team. They have been very collaborative in providing information and background for us as if we've tried to review everything very thoroughly. The one caveat I would point out that throughout the presentation, Stevenson uses as a key point that they would offer opportunities to the students that are place-bound, I think is the term. And I think that UMB, just right down the road from them, would also have issues with that. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you. Give me just a moment, President Hirschman. Can I give Stevenson just another minute or two?
Yes, they have 1 minute and you have the discretion to extend.
I have 10 seconds, just wanted to respond. In terms of place-bound students, we are specifically referencing students who are not accepted to UMB also, and they accept a relatively small proportion of those students who apply to their program, particularly in terms of qualified applicants.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask the commissioners if you have any questions, either for Stevenson or for Secretary Fielder. You all know I say this all the time. I would not make a good faculty member because I give you 10 seconds if somebody doesn't raise their hand.
Commissioner Boyd? I have one question related to with the proposed program at Stevenson, what is the projected time to degree for a student? Also, what is the tuition cost? And whether or not the internship follows the completion of the academic coursework or is occurring throughout that sequence of years?
Dean Dermowitz, could you respond to those questions?
Yes, sorry, I needed to find the microphone button again. So I may have to ask you to remind me what all of the questions are. But our time to degree is 3 years, much like most DPT programs. And the clinical experiences, there are 2 types. There's an integrated clinical experience and then a terminal clinical experience. Those are all completed within the 3 years. An integrated clinical experience is like a part-time, it's part of a course, it's a few days in a term, whereas the terminal clinical experience is the full-time clinical experience that CAPTE specifies needs to have a minimum of 30 weeks. And so that is planned for the entire last year of our program. And then the tuition, I need to just go back to our original proposal to get the exact number that we proposed. We are proposing that we have an annual tuition of $17,500 a year with annual student fees of $3,500 a year. And does that answer all of the questions?
There were 3 and you answered 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Dr. Serrano, Commissioner Serrano?
I have one.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you. I assume if there's a chat, do we have a chat function? Yeah, if you wanted to put it in the chat. And while we're waiting to see if a question appears there, does anyone else, do any other commissioners have any questions?
I have one.
Can
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman.
Go, please go ahead.
My question is to Stevenson. I see that you will work with the other institutions that already have the program. How would you what would you offer to, how would you go about working with them in terms of be sure that they keep the program also?
Mary Pat, could you repeat that question? Some of it went in and out.
Right, and Commissioner Coleman, I think we were all having trouble hearing that. Could you repeat that or put it in the chat?
Yes, my question is, it was offered by Stevenson to work with the institutions that would have. My question to Stevenson is, how would you go about working with them to be sure that their program is remaining intact?
Okay, so I think the question is, President, you understood it? Okay.
I got it. Yes. So first of all, I think we are open to a dialogue on this topic. So I don't want to make any doctrinaire statements, but certainly a monitoring protocol to make sure that their programs and our programs all continue to be vibrant, to identify any nascent issues, to think about, obviously mindful of antitrust issues, but to think about how we can all collaborate in processes like admissions. There are many models for that out there across the nation. And so my point is that we are open to that dialogue and we're eager to engage in it if the commission does recommend implementation. But I don't want to give a specific answer in terms of committing anyone to anything. I'd like to hear my colleague at UMES and UMB do. Not at this moment, of course. Go forward.
And Commissioner Serrano had the question of how does the tuition at Stevenson compare to the tuition at UMES? And UMES, you could answer that now, or you're going to have some time in a few minutes. Would you like to answer that question?
Thank you very much. UMES would be happy to answer the question. The tuition at UMES is $15,000. And we'll go into more detail as you turn the microphone over to us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the commissioners? All right, then let me turn things back over to UMES. So please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I would like to start as president. I'm President Heidi Anderson, and I really just want to say to the commissioners, thank you for listening to us today and having us here. I hope you can hear me clearly. I have with us today our provost, Dr. Nimi, the dean of the school, Dr. Allen, and also Department Chair Dr. Rabel, who will really take the bulk of the conversation. I really wanted to start with just brief remarks. I appreciate your time in reviewing our materials and our objection. More importantly, I really appreciate, and we as an institution appreciate, Secretary Fielder's very thorough, careful analysis of this particular program. We also appreciate and agree with Secretary Fielder's recommendation to you, and that is, please uphold his recommendation to not move this program forward. There are 3 points of objection that we have clearly identified to you in our materials. First of all, creating another physical therapy program in the state of Maryland would hurt UMES in a number of ways. It would, first of all, create a demand on the already limited, the very limited number of clinical sites that are required by the accrediting body. Second, it would dilute the current student application pool, that is where we all are pulling students into our programs. And third, I would just like to say this, program duplication has already hurt our institution previously. And given the recent, very, very recent resolution of the HBCU coalition settlement, we believe that allowing duplication of this kind would continue to rekindle this practice. I would like to turn it over now to Dr. Rabel, who will give you more details.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Anderson. And I'd like to thank MHEC for the opportunity to speak today. As I begin my discussion, it is important to remember that physical therapy profession is composed of both physical therapists as well as physical therapist assistants, and that while these programs are different, they both compete for similar resources, including clinical sites and employment opportunities. According to our accreditation body, there are 271 physical therapist programs and 389 physical therapist assistant programs throughout the country. Bearing this in mind, we believe there are 4 primary reasons as to why the proposed program in Stevenson would cause significant harm to UMES, as well as other existing physical therapy programs in the state. Reason number 1, we are competing for a declining pool of student applicants from a similar area. Maryland currently has, as the commissioner or the field secretary Fielder has stated, 8, but they also have another program at Frederick Community College that is also in the process of opening as far as a physical therapy assistant program. So if you think about the 11 programs that Maryland now has, all of the applicants in the state of Maryland, we have to pull from those individuals in order to fill our class sizes. In addition, Maryland's border states, who also compete for applicants within the state of Maryland, currently have a combined total of 35 physical therapist programs and 34 assistant programs. Maryland is located in the South Atlantic geographical region of the country, and according to our accreditation's 2020 fact sheet, which just came out last week, has the highest number of physical therapist educational programs and the highest number of graduates. So we are not only competing with for applicants between more programs, but it is also essential to recognize that the national average of qualified applicants applying to physical therapist programs has been declining since 2016, and according to the fact sheet, continues to do so. UMES has also seen a reduction in qualified applicants, and we have been proactive in this. As a result, we've been advancing our recruitment efforts statewide for many years now. Stevenson has repeatedly stated that establishing a DPT program would not constitute unreasonable duplication nor cause harm. The primary reason given was the geographical distance of 145 miles between themselves and UMES, and that UMES offers a larger class size in a larger academic environment. Stevenson goes on to state that they would not be competing for the same applicant pool. This is absolutely false, as the UMES DPT program has consistently recruited and admitted students throughout the entire state of Maryland. In fact, 79.4% of the UMES DPT class that started here just a few weeks ago are from the region of Maryland west of the Bay Bridge. In addition, UMES consistently graduates approximately 30 students each year. Therefore, we contend that Stevenson's proposed cohort size is more similar than different from UMES. In addition, Stevenson's proposed curriculum is also similar to UMES, as they will be using a more traditional model and they provide clinical experiences throughout the course of study. It simply stands to reason that if you have similar programs recruiting students who will turn out physical therapists, then one of the programs is going to be hurt. Reason number two, the physical therapy job market is on the path to saturation, and by 2020, according to the recent workforce report, it's expected to be a surplus of 25,000 physical therapists. This number does not even include the physical therapist assistant. And I think it's important to understand that when we're talking about employment and who's showing whether there's a surplus or a demand, to understand whether you're talking about simply physical therapists or whether you're talking about the physical therapy field, because many times it's confusing and they don't consider the assistant and they don't consider or lump in the aide in that ballpark of what is considered to be the physical therapy profession. According to the aggregate data report, employment rates for 2020 that just came out ranged between 67 and 100%. Over the past 10 years of recorded data, the range of employment rates has never been this broad. This suggests employment in certain areas of the country has already started to become more difficult. If this is any type of indicator as to what is on the horizon, I believe we need to be very careful, as we do not want to graduate students who cannot find jobs. Reason number three, there are significant challenges acquiring and maintaining student clinical education experiences. The competition for clinical sites is fierce, and UMES continuously struggles to maintain the number and variety of clinical sites to meet accreditation expectations. And that's very important as well. You can have 50 clinical sites that say, we'll be happy to take your student, but if all of those clinical sites are of the same nature, it's not necessarily going to meet the accreditation expectations. We need to be aware of that, because when a site does make a commitment today, and the time comes to actually place the student, it is not unusual for the situation to change, and the program then has to quickly find another placement. In addition, surrounding states are regularly requesting and obtaining site placements within Maryland, making the competition for clinical sites even more difficult. UMES is located in a rural area, and we must reach out to locations throughout the Baltimore metropolitan region to provide our students with clinical experiences. In Stevenson's proposal, they mentioned that UMES was such a distance away that their program would not constitute unreasonable duplication nor harm. Again, this is false, because UMES relies heavily on clinical placements throughout the state of Maryland. Over the past several years, at least 65% of UMES's clinical site placements have been located within the region of Maryland west of the Bay Bridge.
1 minute remaining.
Reason number four, it's increasingly difficult to recruit and retain qualified faculty members because of the significant increase in new programs across the country and accreditation requirements for faculty members. The American Council recently stated that there's a nationwide shortage of faculty, and one of the reasons is because our accreditation body requires that core faculty be a blend of entry-level and post-professional degrees. The shortage is with the post-professional degrees. In fact, if Stevenson were permitted to open a DPT program, faculty would be recruited from both UMB and UMES, likely hurting both institutions and jeopardizing program accreditation status. This scenario is not theory, but it is actually played out in reality here at UMES. The physical therapy profession is one member of the health professions family, and as such, we have a physician assistant program here on campus as well. A new physician assistant program recently opened in Maryland, and UMES has already lost a faculty member to that new program located on the western region of the state. Our decision.
Finish a couple sentences.
May I finish? Our decision to. Okay, thank you. Our decision to object to starting another physical therapy program is supported by the profession's two primary national organizations. Both have stated that the decline for physical therapists in the physical therapy workforce is declining, and they strongly urge academic administrators to consider the landscape before adding any new educational programs. UMES is aligned with this position, and if Stevenson were approved, it would constitute unreasonable program duplication that would cause significant harm to UMES. I also believe it would cause harm to other programs in the state of Maryland. We believe the commission got this right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you, President Anderson and Dr. Ravel. Commissioners, any questions that you'd like to ask at this point of UMES?
Madam Chair, this is Chuck Daniels. I have a question.
Go ahead.
My question for UMES is, if you could comment on the acceptance rate for the DPT program at their school, and comments on how many qualified students are denied acceptance.
And that's for you, MES, Commissioner McDaniels.
Question.
Yes, yes.
Can you repeat the question for us, please?
Could you comment on the acceptance rate of students to the DPT program? What percent of the students applied get accepted? And how about what are the number of students or qualified students that are denied acceptance?
Okay. I can tell you that our admissions has been declining like everyone else. All the other programs in the country, it has been declining. I think within the nation, it's at about 10% annually. It's been declining. I thought I recognized that, as well as ours. Ours is closer to 15%. So having said that, last year we had about 184 applicants that were qualified. Of such, we had to interview about 104, and then out of that 104, we were able to fill a class of 34. So it's typically in that range. So I think that might answer your question. If you need more details, please let me know.
Thank you. That does answer the question.
One thing I will say, if I might, is that, when you look at these numbers from PT-CAS, all of the students put forth applications into the system. Many students do so just to see if they are contacted. It doesn't mean that we really truly necessarily have all of that excess as far as applicants are concerned. It's very difficult to fill classes these days.
Thank you. And Commissioner Arcoya, I think your question was answered. Let's go round. Am I correct? In terms of total number of applications, I think that was answered. Any other questions before we move to presentations from UMB?
This is Commissioner Coleman. I have one other comment. Question.
Go ahead, Commissioner Coleman.
My question is, of those 34 students, average of 34 students that are accepted each year, what is the dropout rate?
Yes, thank you for the question. The dropout rate could be for many reasons. It could be for personal reasons. It could be for financial. It could be for academic. I'll just give you the typical amount of attrition that we experience, which if we take in 34, we typically lose 2 to 3, maybe 4 students at the most. And that's been our typical average over the last 5 years.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
I have one quick question. This is Commissioner Jackson. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the number of students who apply and are not accepted. How many reapply in subsequent years? Do you have any data on that?
I don't have specifics on that, but I can tell you that does happen. That's not uncommon. That students will reapply if they're truly interested. They will reapply the next year. However, I would stress that, as I said before, there are a lot of physical therapist programs that have opened across the country, and that's why we're going towards a surplus, and we're competing so much for applicants. So if an applicant doesn't get in one year, these days, it's very easy to see that they're going to get in somewhere else because there are so many schools that have already opened across the country and that continue to do so.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Let me just check here. I see another question coming through the chat. This, with respect to clinical placements, is the 500 individual sites that UMES cites in their letter a finite figure? Any possibility of increasing the number of sites for clinical placements?
Are you speaking that UMES wrote that in a letter?
No, that's a question coming to you, to UMES. So with the 500 individuals clinical sites that you have, the question is that a finite figure, or are there possibilities to increase those sites?
Oh, we struggle every day to increase our clinical sites because, like I said before, what holds today does not necessarily hold tomorrow. When the clinical site says they'll take a student, we really appreciate that, but we have to do this sometimes a year in advance. And then when it comes down to actually placing the student, I can't tell you how many sites end up saying we can't do it for a number of reasons. There are many, many reasons as to why. So we have to constantly keep recruiting and drawing from additional clinical sites. In addition, again, that variety is so important. We have to have a variety. We can't just have outpatient. We have to have inpatient, rehab, long-term care. We have to have a variety of sites. So we are constantly trying to manage and attain more clinical sites. It's a struggle every day.
Dr. Abel, there's one more question from Commissioner Adekoya, who said that she's curious, understandable, applicants are declining nationally, and she's curious about what UMES does to advertise your program. Perhaps you could just give us a brief picture of that.
Oh, certainly, certainly. We have, we've been doing a lot more ever since COVID, especially we're going more virtual. So we are doing 2 open houses every year. We also reach out to have like an open session on a monthly basis as well. So we advertise these virtual visits. Students can come in on a monthly basis. They hit our website and we'll give them tours. We're also opening them up to coming down and having a visit. We also have a partnership with Chesapeake and Warwick where they come down and they bring their students and they have a chance to expose those students to our program. We also go out to a number of the institutions over the bridge. I can tell you that in the last 2 or 3 years, we've visited Morgan, Coppin, we visited UMBC, we visited Towson. So we go around the state and we recruit and we talk to students. And you know, it's been really a productive sessions that we've had, and we're doing everything we can to get the word out.
Thank you. Dr. Dermowitz, is there something to add to that? And then I'd like to move on to the last question.
Well, if I may, I think the 500 individual sites was a number that we cited in our written materials. And so I just wanted to explain that number a little bit. The 500 individual clinical sites is coming from the survey that we are doing of potential clinical sites. It does represent a variety of sites, including hospitals, outpatient clinics, long-term care facilities, public schools, etc. So it does, and it is a fairly limited survey at this point. So the 500 clinical sites is a small, it's not a finite number at all yet.
Thank you for that clarification. And Commissioner Serrano asked the question, and this is the last question I'm going to take in this phase, and then we'll move on to UMB. But the question is, does UMES work in partnership with other universities to increase the number of clinical sites?
Yes, we certainly do. We work with Warwick Community College in Chesapeake, so we do have partnerships there. And I can tell you that we've been recently working with our partners at UMB. Dr. Marchese and myself have met several times over the last several years. We have worked together so that both programs are not hurt, and we're able to provide the students with the clinical experiences. So I have truly appreciated my partnership with her and working with her over the last year and a half.
Great, thank you very much. So let me turn things over to you, MB, and Dr. Marchese, Dr. Resnick. I'm not certain who's going first, so who's ever going to start?
Hi, so I'm Dr. Tori Marchese. I'm the chair of the UMB, the School of Medicine Physical Therapy Program. I want to first thank the Secretary Fielder and the Commission. I also, in light of time, I'm not going to repeat everything, so I might be speaking a little more off the cuff. So everything I had written down, many of them have been touched on. So what I'd like to do is take my time and very poignantly talk about a few key areas. Number one, the shortage of faculty that teach in our DPT program. According to the Commission of Accreditation of Physical Therapy, CAPTE, requirements stipulate at least 50% of the DPT program faculty must have a PhD or equivalent academic doctoral degree. As Dr. Rabel mentioned, the DPT does not meet this requirement. The DPT is an entry-level clinical degree that is to get to licensure. Stevenson University wrote, by focusing on the doctoral level education, Stevenson University or doctoral level education will contribute to the supply to prepare faculty members. That is not accurate. That is not an accurate statement. As stated by the American Council of Academic Physical Therapy, ACAPT, in the recent May 2021 position statement, demand for PT faculty with the necessary qualifications has outpaced the supply of qualified individuals. I will give you a specific example here at UMB. In 2019, we had a search for a faculty member. We ended up only having only two qualified candidates for that position that even applied. Both qualified applicants also had applied to many, many other programs. I cannot stress enough that if Stevenson University is able to open a DPT program, there are only so many DPT programs in the country. There are so many qualified applicants. It would do demonstrable harm to UMB. I am already at the 50% member. One faculty member leaves, I'm already going to be on that CAPT. We're not going to meet our CAPT standards. We would then have to go on probation. I already have an ad that's in preparation. I had a faculty member leave in May. So we are right at that 50%. Of course, like Dr. Rabel already mentioned, we pull upon the same group, and I would be advertising, sadly enough, for the same faculty that Dr. Rabel has at his program. So if Stevenson was open, you have to have adequate faculty to teach that program. Number two, I'd like to talk about the clinical sites and the shortage. As Dr. Rabel stated, we work day in and day at night to supply our students with these clinical sites. We have a director for clinical education. We have an assistant director for clinical education. We have a member for clinical education. Even with all that support, every single year we scramble to find placements. And we are part, as Dr. Rabel mentioned, of the University of Maryland. We participate in many, many meetings. We have been campaigning over the last 2 years with Dr. Sunkmo on something at the system level. Please help us with our placements. We are maxed out within the system. And when I say maxed out, that is the University of Maryland Medical System only meets 30% of my need. So we count on 70% of our clinical placements outside of the system. Okay, so I would like to mention a few key areas that Stevenson mentioned in terms of your clinical placements. You mentioned ATI. ATI is an outpatient practice. In 2019, they offered, we have a contract with them. We have a contract. And in writing, they would say, we're all in. We'll give you sites. They gave us 0 sites in 2019. 2020, they gave us 3. And this upcoming year, 0. So that can really fluctuate from year to year, as Dr. Rabel mentioned. MedStar National, they gave us 0 in 2019. We have a contract with them. So just because you have these letters that say, oh yes, we would love to take your students, doesn't mean that they're going to have a spot for your students. So MedStar National Rehabilitation, 0 in 19, 1 in 2021, and 1 in 2022. And the list goes on for all the ones that you gave examples for, because we have contracts with those places as well. And there's many of them have provided 0 placements. For example, in the school systems during COVID, Carroll County Public Schools, usually they take many of our PED students, 0, 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022. And we have a contract with them. Okay, so moving along to when I think about the difference in the geographic location, and I talk about specific numbers. For our class of 2023, our graduating class of 2023, 91% of our students come from Maryland. We have 7% that come right here from the city, 16% from Baltimore County, and 11% from Carroll County. Stevenson University, I actually live across the street from Stevenson University. That's obviously not in my notes, but across the street, it is only 10 miles from your Stevenson, from your Green Spring area, and 13 miles. We're only 13 miles from your Owings Mills location, which I'm sure that's where your campus will be. 13 miles is not very far. So when we think about where we're pulling our students from, where our students are going and working upon graduation, it is in Baltimore City. It is in Baltimore County. Our students do go look for jobs in Carroll County and many other counties in the surrounding areas. Oh, so even Howard County, 13%, Montgomery County, 12%. So the list goes on. We are serving the exact same population. Lastly, I want to mention the jobs. The numbers that we should go on are our very highly respected American Physical Therapy Association. They have PhDs, they have statisticians running these numbers. When I think about the APTA's physical therapy workforce analysis, for our own APTA to put these numbers out, these numbers are serious. They are not making errors in their analytical presentation. Their projected supply and demand, it started now. These numbers are going up to 2030. I will give an example. CAPTI, our accrediting agency, requires that we post these numbers on our website. I can guarantee you if Eastern Shore or myself at UMB started posting on our website that our students were not finding jobs, that would put extreme harm on our applicants. Just this past year, with the numbers that we have to post, our students wrote in their survey that they respond to us, it took students up to 6 months to find jobs. That does not happen in the field of physical therapy. 6 months. Typically, students get jobs right away. Typically, we have people calling us. That is not happening anymore. Lastly, I want to mention the numbers that Stevenson's commenting on, saying that they're not validating the numbers from the APTA workforce. We have to take into consideration that the evidence from COVID, PTs have been laid off, they have been furloughed, they have been redirected right here across the street at the University of Maryland Medical Center. One of our very own managers, he was redirected to go to the to support the vaccination efforts. He was pulled from the hospital to help with vaccination efforts. So those numbers are not accurate that Stevenson is reporting, because those are people, they're just getting their jobs back. They're not new jobs. Okay. So that was me saying that off the cuff since I deviated from my original presentation. And at this time, Courtney, Dr. Resnick, my understanding, Courtney is not going to need to speak. Everything that we both had spoken about has been said.
All right. Thank you very much. So there's no one else who's going to speak on behalf of UMB.
Now, I know Dr. Bruce Gerald, the president of our university, is here. He is here in support, and he does not have words prepared to speak today. Thank you, Dr. Gerald, for being here as well.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
my only comment, Madam Chair, is that we do support the decision, the recommendation that Secretary Fielder has made.
Okay.
And I also want to thank that we have Jim Caper here, and obviously we have many people here supporting this initiative as well, because it would do demonstrable harm. And you can hear it in my voice. You can hear it in Dr. Rabel's voice. Everybody has had prepared presentations, but the level of concern, we cannot even stress it enough. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. So Commissioner Serrano posted this question in the chat, and perhaps all of you can see it, but I'll read it. Does the American Council of Academic Physical Therapy have requirements on whether qualified faculty have to be full-time? Could they be adjunct? And do any of the faculty at the Department of Physical Therapy have co-appointments with non-Maryland School of Medicine institutions?
So that's a great question. We have to have a core faculty, you have to have a core group of voting members, and those have to be your 50% that are teaching your students.
So that's 50% must be full-time, is that?
Yes.
So that my 50% that I'm meeting my numbers, many are not, they do not have to be full-time. It's so hard to meet that 50% that we would never be able to have, always make the requirement that they're full-time. So like, for example, I have one DPT PhD, her primary appointment's at the VA, and she works 30 hours with us a week. So she's even geographic full-time, so we stretch it even in that direction. So they do not have to be a 40, they don't have to be a full-time position.
Okay. And the second part of the question was, do you have any co-appointments with other institutions outside of the Maryland School of Medicine?
Other than the VA, many of our core faculty members, no, many of our core faculty have secondary appointments. So secondary appointments with the School of Orthopedics, to the Department of Orthopedics, Department of Neurology. But at the UMB, our faculty do not also teach at another institution. I would highly recommend against that in light of the need to focus on that education for the DPT student. Mike, Raymond, do you have any other? I think you're similar.
Yeah, we're similar. I mean, we tend to have all of our faculty members are full-time core faculty members. So it's real easy for us. You know, we have to meet that 50% rule, and they're all full-time. So, and we don't have anyone sharing at another institution as well because of the workload. It's just too much to be able to share. Thank you.
And one of the only reasons that I'm able to meet that 50% here at UMB is because a few of my faculty have research, as we talked about earlier, research interest, and they're grant funded. So they teach a little bit in our DPT program, and then the other percent is done through research.
And I have a question. Could you clarify again the 50% rule that you have to meet?
Okay, that 50% according to the Commission of Accreditation, PT-CAPT, requirement stipulates that at least 50% of the DPT program faculty must have a PhD or equivalent academic doctoral degree. The DPT does not meet that need.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to be clear on that.
I agree as well, and it's I just needed to state that it's even more challenging to recruit faculty in a rural area that is underserved that we are residing in. So it makes it even more challenging to recruit and retain faculty members.
Thank you. Let me ask the commissioners if you have any other questions.
I have one question, Commissioner Boyd, in terms of the experience of students who apply for that final internship and they don't receive it. What portions of your students have that experience, and what are the recourse for them if it doesn't work the year they apply?
So it's our responsibility to make sure that I have 70 students in our program, and it's our responsibility to make sure all 70 students have the ICE experiences. That's an earlier portion. Those are 8 weeks. They're 8 weeks in the fall and 8 weeks in the spring. That's the part-time. And then the full-time, everybody is required. Our students do 11 weeks to meet our CAPT requirement. 30 weeks is the minimum. Right now during COVID, it's 28. And many programs go well beyond 30. So 30 is the minimum. Not many programs are just 30, we're 33. So it's our responsibility to find the student placements. At this point, thank goodness, we find those placements oftentimes, even if it's the day before, we've had to move students around.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that as well, and it's a big challenge. And one of the things that has helped us, and I believe that Dr. Marchese would agree with me, is the longevity of the institutions. You heard it before: 63 years, 34 years. We have a foundation of alumni that we can draw upon when emergencies hit, and emergencies always hit. So we are begging, we're pleading, we're asking, can you help to take a student because this clinical site has canceled, or the clinical site can no longer do it. So it's that groundwork and that establishment that has really helped us. But without it, it would be, I would say, almost impossible.
Okay.
This year during COVID, we had to reach out to our partners and asked them if they would do 2-to-1 model where they take 2 students to 1 CI so we could meet our needs.
Commissioner Atakaya had another question, and it was for UMB. It was a similar question we asked earlier of UMES, and it is a retention question, but I guess more appropriately, what is the graduation rate for your students?
So we are very similar to UMES. We it can range from 2 to 4 students. It can range. Hopeful this year it'll be 1, but it can range from 1 to 4 students. It's our goal, once students are in, it's our goal to keep the students at any, we provide them support. Even though we have 70 students, we still have a 1-to-15 ratio. We have faculty, we have clinicians that come in and help us that have adjunct appointments. We have 42 faculty that hold adjunct appointments that can help with labs. They do not help though oftentimes with curricular development. They do not do much of the grading with the students. They are not the ones meeting with the students. We all mentor our students very closely. So even though we have 70 students, we know all our students' names. They get individual attention from us because a PT program is a PT program, and we all are required to graduate DPTs that go out and work in the field. So once you get into PT school, the goal is to keep the students. They have the ability.
Absolutely. Our graduation rates are in the 90s as well, 90%. Our licensure pass rate, the first time licensure pass rate is also very high. It's last year, I think it was 96%. Many years we've had 100%, but it is because of the small class sizes as well. Our small class size of graduating approximately 30 students is not that much different than Stevenson's 25 proposed. So it is the small class sizes that allow us to give that individual attention. And it's our commitment to our clinical sites and our faculty at more of a grassroots level that we know everybody that works with us, we know everybody that teaches with us, and we really need to make sure that the students get what they need to be successful. Thank you.
Commissioner Serrano asked, any insight on the number of graduates from UMES and Maryland School of Medicine who go on to become instructors in DPT programs? Any idea of that?
So I don't have the exact statistic to give you. It's many of them have to go on and get a PhD in rehabilitation science, or they have to get an EDD or a doctorate in science, doctorate in health science, and that takes many, many years. We have a PhD program, but we don't graduate but 1 or 2 a year. And ours in a rehabilitation science, so they could be an occupational therapist and go work at Tufts, and they could work in industry. So I'm not even graduating all PTs. So there's many positions typically open for a DPT that has a specialization. We don't have a shortage of people applying there because many, many clinicians want to get into academia. It's the ones with the post-professional doctoral degree that makes every chair just about not be able to catch their breath because it would just be such a shortage for us and we wouldn't be able to meet our teaching needs.
Yes, I agree. We have some that are from our program, and you're talking to one right now. So I'm a graduate of UMES as well, and I came back and I am working here, and I've recruited some of our students that have graduated. Now, the students that do come back and teach, they do have to have some type of specialist certification. They do have to have some advanced credentials, and we have to always meet that mix of the post-professional degrees with the entry-level mixture. So it's quite a balancing act to achieve.
I currently have 2 faculty that are graduates, but they went on to one got his PhD, and then another one got her doctorate in science.
Thank you. All right. Don't see anything else coming up in the chat room, and I don't see anybody clicking on their microphone. So I just want to thank all 3 institutions for your, not just your presentations, but your comments and answering of questions on to Stevenson, UMES, and UMB. We really appreciate the thoroughness of the presentations. So with that, we are going to take a vote as to whether or not to move into a closed session to receive legal advice and perform the administrative function of reviewing a program proposal. And so I would invite one of the commissioners to make that motion, and I will need a second.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Boyd so moves.
Thank you, Commissioner Boyd, and could I have a second?
I second Commissioner Jackson.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. And so I believe I need to do a roll call.
Yes, I can do it for you.
Could you do it? Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Boyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman,
Yes.
Commissioner McDaniels,
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
I don't think Commissioner Brown joined us, so I haven't seen.
and Commissioner Sellinger, if I'm correct, is also not present.
He's not with us, right?
Commissioner Serrano? Oh,
Yeah,
maybe.
do a thumbs up so we can see.
Okay,
Yeah, there
great.
we go.
Thank you. And Commissioner Adekoya.
All right, and so the motion carries. Again,
sorry.
I thank all. I'm sorry.
Did Commissioner Adekoya indicate a yes, or I didn't
Yeah,
hear anything?
Yes,
Oh,
Yes.
she's right there. She gave you the thumbs up.
okay, great. And oh, yes, sorry, Commissioner Barol.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And did we miss anybody? Williams, is Commissioner Williams with us? I thought I
Yes.
saw him. Yeah, so Commissioner Williams. And I think that's everybody. Okay, are we good, Selma?
Yes, sorry, I thought certain people were absent who were not. So
That's okay. Well, there were some people who came in that we didn't think were going to be here, but I think we got everyone. And I'll take just a moment. Did we miss any of the commissioners who are with us to capture your vote? Okay. All right. Again, my thanks to all the institutions who joined us today, and for the commissioners, you'll sign out and then come back in on the other link that you have, and I'll see you in just a minute or two.